Hey, how's it going?
How are you?
Doing pretty well.
Good.
Hello.
Hi.
What is that sound?
What does it sound like to you? I'm curious.
Air conditioner?
Yeah, like background noise, but just kind of like rhythmic.
Interesting. I just cooked a bunch of meat and trying to get the
It's a fan.
smoke smell out, basically. It was mostly successful, but we'll see.
Norbert Wiener predict the sound challenge.
Signal to noise.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, it's so interesting. I've been looking into like how different hormonal stuff. So I'm gonna try it one more time, but I'm not gonna be able to stream it today. I'll just try to record it normally, I guess.
Okay.
I don't think it's gonna work today. I'm trying to restart this. It's really interesting the variation. Like I know we're talking about cardio stuff, but like I'm really curious about like endocrine and hormones and these other sort of like one thing I'd ask Bradley about is sort of I know no, it's not gonna work. I know we talked about like different time scales, and I really wonder about. I have no clue about the time scale and the different rates at which things emerge in like how fast things do travel in like the bloodstream and hormones and endocrines and these other sort of like things that are maybe like more partially almost epigenetic. Like I don't understand how I have no clue how much like genetic expression can change and how long that time scale works. So things are really fast, things are really like much further. So I don't no clue. But
Well, there are many different time scales. Hormones usually act pretty fast and are pretty transient. There are peptides. There are different types of neurotransmitter. Then there are, of course, things that diffuse in the bloodstream, like different drugs. So it really depends. I mean, I don't know if there are any really good computational studies which would really help you get at like counting the time and then comparing the time scales. Usually, you go into the medical literature and it just kind of talks about the time scale where they measured it's like almost like a 19th century measure where they like give someone a drug and then they watch them urinate or something and then they measure the concentration or it's I mean there are different ways you can do the measurements. It's really not like it's not easy, at least in humans, to do that. So I don't know of any good references. I might be surprised though. I don't know what people are doing, but
never know. Okay. What's this? Here we go. So I am starting to record this stuff now. Get this up here. So I think we're basically any I don't know, general updates. I'm really gonna leave that. It'll be funny to come back to.
Gotta investigate the phenomenology of lightheadedness after.
Cardio extractive phenomenon. What happens when you lose major components of your cardiovascular system? We've conducted a research over 12 months where every month made an Nelson Wednesday for local blood donation clinic. With full-fledged EEG capabilities. And, oh my god. Let me spell this right. What would it call like expression? Like when epigenetic changes are expressed? don't know how you'd say that.
Well, there are genes that are expressed usually, and then like I don't know if there's a word for epigenetic. It's usually just kind of like epigenetic changes affect gene expression, or yeah, you could say epigenetic variation. And but there are other terms too. It depends on what you're talking about with respect to like the endocrine system. I'm not really familiar with the latest terminology of like. Yeah, it's an area. It's a bit outside of what I usually work in. So.
I would ask. Go back to Dr. Levin because he's always here in the corner of our discussions, literally figuratively now.
Who's that?
Dr. Levin.
Oh, okay.
Michael Levin.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think last time we left off just around here. I don't remember where exactly it was. We kind of got to this the notes from last time were basically deep dive chapter 7, memetics and cybernetics. Schoolboys don't like Shakespeare and that whole zeitgeist stuff. Jurassic Park, which cool. I think it's because it's surprisingly relevant to me today. The bridge analogy, that was fun. I keep wanting, part of what I want to do in my bloggy thing is like just like the bridge, these little conceptual things. I want to just like make a blog post and reference later. It's partly why I'm doing it, because I feel like that's these little like things you can stack later. I did submit something to Medium. I finally finished it, and it's great because I quote unquote finished it on my blog, and then I was like, okay, I'll send it to Medium too, and then I think I changed like 30 to 40% of it after seeing it there. I was like, yes, like this is good because it definitely made my points a lot more clear to somebody who doesn't have any context for what we're doing, which is kind of my aim. It's one of those things where it's like I'm sitting on a lot of stuff that's partially written, and I just want to start putting it out there and making myself go through the process of putting it out there. And then like, okay, I'm going to change it and improve it. And then it's like, I'll do a couple of revisions, but it's like, just let's let it go. Like, just put it out into the world. And I really want to continue on that path, especially these little like recap posts that are in my mind. So it's slow, but I'm getting there.
I saw that. Yeah. So I'll look at that. Is that something that I can approve? Like, I'll probably go through it, but is that something that I can, I guess when I approve it it's not approve it, but it's like it's submitted if I take it and I rewrite it. Do you want to change anything before then, or?
It's so weird because I don't understand the setup now because I submitted it and then I went back to it. It's like, do you want to publish it? So I can publish it myself, but I'm like, I'm fine if you want to review it too. If there's anything that like you can look it over. Like if not, if there's anything you particularly want to correct, like let me know, I guess. But I don't really like it's ready to go.
Oh, okay.
If you want to, if there's improvements to be made, you can make them. Just let me know because I'll affect it. Or if there's something you really want to add, let me know and say, oh, I really wanted to say this.
Well, I just want to check it for like grammar and
like
style.
Yeah,
it won't be
that's
like yeah.
That's always appreciated.
Yeah,
it should be good, but I'm happy to have any feedback. I need feedback about stuff, and especially phenomenological stuff is so hard to be as crisp as I want to be. So I have to fail forward. Is how I see it.
Well, did you want Amanda to look it over, or do you think?
Sure, if you want to. I should probably. It's so tough because I kind of want us all to be able to access it together. It's like, should I put it in a Google Doc? Should I just?
You could. Well, you could do that. I mean, Amanda, if you want to give some comments, we can do that. And I mean,
there's a Notion page for it, right?
Yes,
yeah,
and
it should be in the Notion.
I can just pull from my post and put it there if you want, because it's been updated since.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which wouldn't be hard to do, in theory.
I don't know, whatever's easiest, but I'm happy to give feedback.
Because I changed the title to make it more clear. Hopefully this updates. Update magically. Yeah, the difficulty of mutual constraints is what I specified it as. And I'll talk about the reductions and stuff later. But it's a lot more crisp. I'll just do an easy version and take this in there. Okay, cool. Sorry, I don't want to take up too much time with it.
But yeah, I'm glad to see it. You're getting some stuff out.
It's a it's a process.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I think it was that naturalization of phenomenology, part 1.
Yeah, there we go. Something like this. Okay, it seemed to copy pretty nicely. So if you want to look at that and interesting. It seemed to have saved a comment from last time, which is pretty cool. Or maybe it's just no, I think it well, hold on. I'm gonna just no. Sorry. I just want to keep that comment outside of that. That did not work. No. Yes. Okay. So basically everything above the old version should have the new stuff. Whew. But no, not urgent. Let's focus on Norbert today. So it looks like, I don't know if we started this one or not. I don't remember.
We were reading chapter 8, which is this one for this meeting, and starting the next chapter because this one was pretty short.
And I'll defer to you. Do you want to go through the notes you have here, or do you want to just go to the text, or how do you want to start that? Keep these separate.
So I guess this chapter was pretty short, so a lot of the chapter ended up in the form of screenshots in that note page.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it doesn't really matter. We can just look at the PDF, the text.
Okay. Here we go.
Yeah, so he starts by going back to like the big picture. Like, this is what I'm doing in this book, remember? Which I appreciated. And then he talks about how the times are changing when it comes to like media. So right away I was like, oh, that obviously there's a lot that's changed between then and now. So I wonder, where is his diagnosis still accurate? Where is it outdated? And my impression was that he's still spot on. He describes this like kind of flattening of culture. And he describes how in academia and in art, like individuality isn't encouraged. There's kind of like an authoritarianism where one phrase he uses is that like the form is coming before the content. And I thought that point was captured well. I guess we can start with this tweet that I included. So he says that like ideally, an artist or a scientist would get into it because they're passionate about it. And it's not like a career thing or a social hierarchy thing. They would be motivated by their own passions. And then recently I saw this tweet that like academia has become something that you do when you're the gifted and talented student. You just like keep going with it and keep getting your higher degrees. And a result of that is like, they say unhappiness in academia, because academia is more suited for like the weirdos than this kind of person who's like chasing prestige. Or in this tweet they say than people who want to change the world. But yeah, like the general vibe is that these like higher degrees have started to attract people who just want to like, have more letters next to their name and aren't like driven by like a deep passion. So I thought that was funny, a funny parallel.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I wish I could bring in Avery to this discussion because, one second. I had some talks about, this is actually a really interesting, I don't know if Agnes identifies as like autistic per se.
I don't know anything about this person.
But Avery's kind of has some ideas about almost like autistic exploitation in terms of the people who would like obsessively focus on things, and even how technologically speaking, maybe some of the most likely people to develop like computers and a lot of like network information theory and stuff like that. Maybe literally is like kind of is more a natural resting spot for people who want to obsess over minor details about things. And sort of the tension between that versus let's commodify it and bring it to war, and these other tensions that kind of want to apply some of the seeking of stuff. And I won't go into that too much, but I think that's actually quite an interesting and relevant point in the sense of even the pursuit of stuff is sort of, I don't want to say tainted, but warped. And I am curious, to think about this. I'm actually quite even just like this sentence. It reminds me quite a bit of some of the stuff I said about what a modern day Norbert Wiener would comment on and talk about, and it feels like yes, like it's related to this. It's kind of related to this too, in the sense of those pressures are changing, and it's interesting because I feel like I found, I don't think I took it with me. I found a book recently. It's so weird because Norbert, and I'm not, I'm a Norbert fanboy, but I also feel like it's such a tough line because Norbert was a somewhat unique person, both in terms of his sort of intellectual capacity and training from his, dad trying to make him a prodigy, yes, but also like, turn this off. Also in terms of what he could see. And it's really interesting because in some ways he wrote books, but he also kind of like diminished himself. And it's so tough because the perspective that he is trying to get at feels really important, but also hard to convey. But it's like the perspective of someone who knows, the difference between someone who's like, appreciating music, or who's made the music and knows how to like tune the guitar or make either like craft a guitar, but also how to play the guitar. Like all of those things are different. And I feel like even now, like it's so much easier to be a content creator of any kind. And it's sort of like pushing back against that in some way. So anybody can create content, but the comparisons that you're making it to are like against the entire global spectrum that's available, at least as far as it's marketable and pretty and just commodifiable in the economy as it is. So it's this very it's very interesting, and I think it relates to this. So anyway, we can go back to the text here.
Well, it's interesting because I started by saying like, yeah, I think his diagnosis is spot on. But I guess one thing that has changed is, so that bit that you had highlighted, it does seem true now that like anyone can make a little platform for themselves, and obviously like there an account and someone's post can be more or less popular, but there isn't a sense in which someone could people can publish whatever they want. But because of that, it's like other forces are at play when determining like what becomes popular.
Yes,
He's right here, but like now it's more complicated. But I still think what he's describing is spot on. Like in terms of what gets produced is generally like what's not so risky and much more marketable. And he compares it to like white bread that's produced for reasons that are produced for reasons besides its like value as food. Practical reasons.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting. Is it by the bakery comment here?
The top of 132.
Yeah, the ever thinning stream of total bulk communication. Yeah. And I think he's actually right to mention food, because like I do think that like, you know, the majority, like if you look at most food labels, you'll find things that are not about food.
Not food, yeah.
They're these things that are added for a variety of reasons, whether it's, you know, preservatives or just because it's cheaper to add some fluff or whatever it is. And it's like, you know, there's sort of this massive push towards, you know, thinning things out, perhaps. Our elementary children in secondary school are more some formal classroom discipline than an intellectual discipline of learning something thoroughly. I wonder what he would say about that now.
So even like eventually he talks about like the forces at play in picking up a PhD thesis. Ultimately, it's not like what the individual is most passionate about. He has a good line that it's like the student will like end up being distracted and hindered by having to like check these boxes, checking boxes that like the tasks don't matter and are obstacles to good work. So that's what he was talking about when he says like form over content, like the form, the labels of like PhD or the structure of just going through an educational system that like gains a force of its own, and the actual content of education is disvalued.
Mm-hmm. Kind of funny to me to see Norbert say "Lord only knows."
Oh yeah, at one point towards the end, he says like, "Heaven help us" a bunch of times.
Save us!
Heaven save us.
From the first novels, which are written because a young man desires the prestige of being a novelist, rather than because he has something to say. Oh boy, Norbert! Don't. Good thing it's not around for ChatGTP junk novels that are everywhere now.
Well, it's funny because like what he was identifying it was almost like he was identifying bot generated content before bots, like human generated bot tier content, where people just like regurgitate the things that are told to them. And yeah, there's this kind of, he doesn't use the word authoritarian, but I think that's accurate. Like authoritarian forces in academia where it's hard to be creative.
Not all the artistic pedants are academicians. There are pedantic avant-gardists. As a comment, I guess, I'd be curious. I don't know if Norbert explicitly gets at it. I guess not here because it's quite a short chapter. But like, does Norbert really? How do I phrase this? Norbert has said earlier in the textbook. Write this out here. Like, Norbert's talked about this process of like the scientist and the scientist's goal and the time scale. And I don't know if he states this explicitly so far, because I'm kind of seeing something, but I don't know if he says it. I feel like something he would say, but I don't know if he's explicitly said it anywhere in that's interesting, the Niagara. That's just like this. I think Niagara Falls is more popular, or like it's a New York related upstate northeastern thing, because I don't know if a lot of people know where Niagara Falls is anymore. I do, but like it's because I'm from New York. So anyway, Norbert is making this claim about, earlier he talks about, the different kind of quote unquote devils, how and the games that they're playing, and from trying to understand nature is a specific success in trying to understand nature has a different time scale of fruition than success in trying to make money or trying to win a political battle or politics or parts of economy and other things that in the realm of mankind and civilization. But like, there's something here where I kind of, and I don't know if there is, I kind of want there to be Norbert trying to say something that is essentially I don't know if Norbert says this, but I feel like what I kind of put together him saying is when scientific work is to be done, and I'm gonna quote one of my old kind of favorite sayings of him, which was he's kind of quoting his somewhere he's talking about his dad. Like, yeah, my dad told me that being a scholar is not a job, but it's a consecration. Something like that. Whereas like Norbert very much idolizes this sort of, process of getting this stuff. And I think he's sort of ethically and morally, it's his thing. And I'm not saying that dismissively because I actually agree with it, but I'm saying he has this kind of moral argument component. But I think there's something more too that he's getting at, which is sort of like, and I don't know if he says this part, but I feel him saying it, which is there is something important about unfooled around with pursuit of engaging science, engaging in understanding the world. It's kind of like the meme of, oh, I want to understand what is going on, so that way I can truly understand nature, versus the modern scientist is like, oh, I want to understand this and finish my manuscript so I can be published in Nature. Like there's kind of like that meme. But I'm feeling, is there sort of is Norbert basically trying to say we need to play the game with the simple devil and the simple game where it's not changing, because the more that's how we actually understand the world. And there's some inherent very important thing about that, versus just that's the better pure way to do it. Like I feel like, to put it in my language, like we're not looking at the signal anymore. Like we're looking at this sort of further diluted variations of the signal. We're not trying to decipher or determine the noise. We've incorporated more and more and more like fuss with the noise. Or another way of saying this is sort of, I actually really like this thing, and I've been fascinated from afar with this topic. Something basically that's called escalation theory or escalation hypothesis, which is about, as species that have a lot of competition for a niche or a way of living or a species or something. This is probably the better one here. Organisms are in constant conflict with one another and devote many resources to thwarting the adaptations evolution brings to all competing organisms as time advances. This is in contrast to adaptations and evolution may bring that are unrelated to competition with other organisms adapting to ecological niches based upon their factors, geology and climate. Basically, what I interpret this as in my referencing here is kind of Norbert basically getting at escalation hypothesis in the sense of, now we're spending so much more time not pursuing the actual science of understanding nature, or spending so much more of our time, jumping through all these hoops to do the PhD that has nothing to do with actually developing understanding. We have to do all this other stuff just to get a chance to do the other stuff. And sort of it's related to escalation hypothesis, in that the escalation hypothesis evolutionarily is basically saying, when there's evolution, is evolution benefiting the immediate competition of other competitors in the niche of like, short-term rivalry, as opposed to adapting to the broader climate, adapting to the broader changes that are happening. Whereas if it's evolutionary beneficial to have a really precise, if you're spending your evolutionary capital on competitive adaptation, that you're optimizing the competition as opposed to actually dealing with the environment. And I feel like I kind of get Norbert as trying to say that, but I don't know if he does. And I'm curious if you guys see it that way, because I get the sense that he's kind of gesturing towards that, but I don't really know. Like I think he would interpret the, what did he say up here? I know he talked about devils and all that. Is the devil Manichaean or Augustinian? The scientist is always working to discover an organization in the universe, and thus playing a game against the arch enemy disorganization. And I think this is, yeah, I'm so glad I found this quote in particular, because it's like, I think Norbert views the scientist, and that's actually quite related to this. Yeah, like I think Amanda added emphasis here.
I found the actual quote.
Oh, great. I think Norbert basically sees this as true. His take on the scientist is very much, and I like this. I don't know if I agree. Like, to me, this is like super like the true scholar monk ideal, and I really like that. I think he's basically saying this is what it should be, but I also feel like he's I don't know if he's just kind of like being very lofty and is, oh, this is how it should be, or if he's actually open to saying more than that. Yeah, but I think he definitely wants scientists to play as, if you call yourself a scientist, you should see it as a consecration. You see this like holy quest, religious aside or not, but this quest to play the long game against the big bad enemy, which is like the big bad arch enemy of entropy. And are you like, that's the game you have to be focused on and not just be distracted by this other like BS of human doing, which makes sense if for him we're just kind of bailed out of, hey, I'm not going to do defense stuff anymore. So anyway, we can continue with this. I think I'm a little further away here. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that made me think of another line that I liked, which is he is railing against communication when there's no need for communication. Communication without need for communication. So just like publishing because your career depends on it, and not because you actually stand behind like what you're doing, I guess would be the most extreme case. Like the act of communicating itself, setting aside the content, like the act of communicating itself like has its own momentum. Like there's social forces that just prompt, like that motivate people, like saying something even when they have nothing to say, is how I read that. And he's saying that that's present in like the arts and sciences as well.
I'm just saying this for myself, but what I mean by here is like, I think kind of what Norbert's maybe getting at, and this is me saying it again, is there's something very core. Well, I guess I'll say what I'm getting at is back in in the olden days, caveman days, prehistory, whatever, when you heard a sound, it's because there was a sound that was made. When you had light or some, if there was some energy or some reaction, it wasn't because it was like artificially generated. Some species would make, camouflage or do these things that were deceitful, and cunning and guile, and that's, but there was such an emphasis on orienting towards, if there was a sound, if there's a sound in the forest and there's twig snapping and a rustle, it wasn't, oh, that's somebody playing the boombox. It was, oh shit, something's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like something Norbert's getting at is about like what you said reminded me of what you said reminded me a bit of like it's escaped me in terms of what I was trying to pinpoint. I'll come back to that. I don't know how to say it on my mind, but it's really related to all this. And we can probably wax politically in this chapter for a lot more. But I don't know how much you want to do that versus move on. It's already only 10 minutes left as it is. And I don't know where the time went. So
I'm fine just sticking with this chapter and starting the next one next time.
we're pretty close.
I read a bit of it, but I kind of felt like I didn't read enough to get like the overarching. I didn't read enough to get the point of what he was saying. He's like going through the history of some inventions, and it was interesting, and I learned a lot, but I don't know his point yet.
Yeah.
Oh, the monkey's paw. That's a good story. I wonder what he's going to say about it.
Mm.
Yeah, so I'm fine sticking with chapter 8. I think I know what you mean when you say like when you wrote like focusing on discernment of the signal, which I think that's particularly difficult at this point in time.
Well, I think it's the most, and this is something that I actually. Sorry, you can finish your point. I didn't interrupt you.
Well, I guess not, and I don't mean that in like the way that I've heard a bunch of people say, like, oh, there's so much misinformation out there, like you don't know what's true. I think I want to say something like more profound than that. Like I keep saying like social forces, but I don't know a better way to say that. I feel like the social forces are pushing us away from what actually matters or something.
Social as in
the types of behavior that's like incentivized just seems to be the kind of this kind of like communication where there's no need for communication. An incentivization of like this production of art and science as though it's a material good that we need as much of as possible. Yeah, I have to think about that more.
Well, I mean, easy for me. This is my version of this, which is again self-absorbed version of it here is like I thought like you've seen everybody's seen me talk about like, what about like this for Instagram or discussion series or I'll write here, write this and do that. And you've seen my different websites. And I'm currently my own opinion of this is like, man, I hate social media altogether. Like I love it because it gives me access to things, but I hate the pressure that I feel to make content. Like I think making content is like this huge, and it's weird because it's like you could just pull out your phone and stream anything and share something and do whatever. But it's like making content is almost like an extreme version of like a sugar cookie. Like it's super appealing. You love to see, what's like the most extreme stuff. It's people doing anything. It doesn't really matter. It's just watching other people, watching a human being do something. And it's compelling. You can just do it. And it's like, it helps if you're attractive. It helps if you're engaging. It helps if you're witty, have a charisma, or if you have like a city or a town or something that you want to show off, and it's sort of like it's this huge incentive to just make something that's like, oh, I'm going to get the feedback that, hey, everybody liked my post, so I can get sponsorship and they'll send me a coupon and then I can, and it's like, I feel that pressure a lot when I'm trying to manage my own time and life. And it's like, is that really what I want to do? And this is related to what I said, I think I said this yesterday, where it's like, man, like we're going so deep in all this phenomenology stuff and it's great, but it's so tricky because it's such a deep dive. And I think anybody doing quote unquote graduate level research or in-depth research would be the same way. Like you're diving so deep into the stuff and then it's like, it's hard enough as a quote unquote normal graduate work, which I think is kind of what Norbert's getting at. Like that's a hard thing to do as in of itself. But now it's like, that feels so different from making content or, like justifying why you're doing that when there's so many other ways of engaging that are much more accessible and fun and rewarded. And it's like, what do you do with that? So it's interesting to me to kind of have a side tangent on that. I feel like it's interesting for me sometimes I hear Norbert and I hear him being kind of to drag Norbert in an unfair way, which I don't always do, but it's probably good for me to do since I praise him so much. Norbert sounds kind of idealistically whiny at times, like to no end, just sort of decrying the injustice of the universe. And I was like, okay, Norbert, like cool, like I agree with him most of the time. But like why, like outside of saying, oh, this is bad, like what's your point? And sometimes I hear Norbert super explicitly being no, like here is the point, here is the why. And I find that to be interesting in this book because I hear the different, like I hear things differently at different times. Almost out of time.
I think your point about feeling pressure to make things for social media, even in like this academic context, is telling. Like this pressure to like create just something for consumption, not necessarily something of quality. It's like you can't just say like, oh no, that's just like what the kids are doing. That's not me. It's like that kind of feeling is present in, I don't know, I see it on like academic Twitter to the extent that I pay attention to that. It's like you got to get your bite-sized version of whatever, even if it's cool work, like we were talking about a few meetings ago. Even if it's very cool work, you got to take some of it out of context so that you can market it. And yeah, I think that manifests itself in
what really, go ahead, sorry.
That's it.
What really gets me right now is like it's so popular to say make the hook, make the instantaneous hook of whatever you're saying or writing be something is basically not true, just to get people to disagree with it. Like it's not really a veil thing anymore. It's just, oh, did we only use 2% of our brains? It's like no, but it's like you got to have this sensational thing in the first 3 seconds of your reel, TikTok, post, whatever it is, and it's like we are so groomed to do that right now. At the same time, and it's so weird because all of this is like everything I'm about to say is totally fresh in my brain about this stuff. At the same time, I remember when academic is Instagram, when I first saw it, academic Instagram started taking off. And a lot of like really important things like this is what a scientist looks like, or scientists who selfie, to say, oh, you can be a scientist and use social media. You can be a scientist and wear makeup. You can be a scientist and like dress up and be pretty. You can be a scientist and be gay, LGBTQ. You could like, so it's like this hugely like double-edged sword, but like all the way of people using this platform, this medium to do stuff that works, but then also this insidious pressure to commoditize it as well. And it's so, I've gone back and forth so many times, like, I just, where I am now is like, what do I want to do here? like do I want to become successful? And it's like, do I want to become an influencer? And it's like I kind of keep going back to like, no, I don't. Like I want to share stuff, but I don't want to invest my time. Like I know for me, if I can do work for like the paper pyramid and push this project forward, like that's huge. And I feel like I'm in a unique position to try to do that, or at least help other people do that. But at the same time, you know, it's like I have to really I have to really will that into happening, because there's so much like make a BS, post or tweet or something, and it's just like that I find myself increasingly distancing from that in different ways. So I'm very happy to have discussion groups like this, because I think they kind of preserve my clarity that there is something to pursue here. So I could go on and on about that, but we're basically out of time. So any final thoughts we'd like to share ahead of Chapter 9 in the Industrial Revolutions?
A very strong concluding paragraph, again, like the last chapter.
More intense.
Heaven save us.
Well, you know what? Great. I can be in range with Norbert, and I'll feel good about that. What enrages me and always disappoints and grieves me is the preference of great schools of learning for the derivative as opposed to the original, and for the conventional and the thin, which can be duplicated in many copies, rather than the new and the powerful, for arid correctness. So that's a pretty cool term. And limitation of scope and method, rather than for universal newness and beauty, wherever it may be seen. Moreover, I protest, not only as have I already done against the cutting off of intellectual originality by the difficulties of the means of communication in the modern world, which we just went into that, but even more against the axe, which has been put to the root of originality because of the people who have elected communications as a career, so often have nothing more to communicate. Wow. This is I don't know why. Now I'm smiling in a different way now. So I'm glad you highlighted the paragraph as something to think about. Because it's kind of like, I don't know. Norbert's kind of a fuddy-duddy, like person walking around aimlessly getting lost all the time in Cambridge. But then to see him kind of like, lay it out is kind of amusing. So we'll continue next time with his perhaps enraged, perhaps heaven calling. We'll see if he calls upon heaven to deal with the Industrial Revolution.
No, it was a very different tone.
In the Second Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll leave it at that, and we'll pick up next time with Chapter 9.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Take
Thanks.
care.
Take care.
See you soon.
See you. Bye.